I have to say something about the ongoing genocide in Gaza. I have spent my whole adult life thinking, educating, and speaking up about injustices around the world. Many of these have been happening within indigenous communities. My mother is an enrolled member at White Earth. I grew up in a native space. I speak the Ojibwe language. However, I think a lot about those that have happened in my father's experience as well. My father was an Austrian Jewish immigrant and survivor of the Nazi Holocaust. He, both of his parents and two cousins survived, and pretty much everyone else on that side of our family was killed. Throughout his life, my father could really tolerate no injustice, which is why he worked at times as a labor union organizer and in education, and also for the United States government, Native agencies and anti-poverty agencies, and at times even for tribes and tribal schools. And so he passed away in 2016, and I think about what he stood for and what he would have said about what has been happening in Gaza this past couple of years. One of his cousins who survived as well, whose name was Nellie, as a teenager, when the Nazis were taking over in Europe, believed that there was a better life, way, and place for the Israeli people. And she believed in the idea of Israel. And when everyone else was being rounded up and killed, including her parents and her brother, she walked with friends across Europe, down the Danube, stowed away on a ship, and headed to Palestine. Their ship was boarded by the British military. They ended up jumping from the ship and swimming to shore, and she was there since the genesis of Israel. She too believed in humans, humanity, and human rights. I'm so glad that Nellie and my dad didn't have to see what's been happening the past couple of years. There are about 7 million people who live in Israel. There are just as many who live in the United States. I understand that the Netanyahu administration represents a tiny fraction of the Israeli people and is not representative of the will of the people there. And I understand that when you look at the entire Jewish population of planet Earth or the United States, it is by no means representative of the views of all Jewish people everywhere else either. When the terror attack happened in Israel and innocent Israeli citizens were being killed, certainly Israel had to protect and defend its citizens and was right to deal with Hamas and right to call that a terrorist act. However, it was not necessary to kill an entire classroom of children every day for a year and a half to render the Israeli population safe. That was not necessary. And today, it is not necessary to block humanitarian aid like food and medicine from getting to innocent people in Palestine just to discourage Hamas. And I believe that Israel has approached this horrible event not defensively with an eye to protecting their citizenry and engineering peace, but opportunistically to intentionally kill and render life miserable for the entire Palestinian population so that they will either die or leave. And they can then supplant that population. And they've already been making plans to do exactly that. It has been another manifestation of colonization. And the United States has paid for the entire thing and enabled it. Democrats and Republicans alike have enabled and supported and refused to speak up about and against this. Not all, and not in equal measure, but the parties, when in power, did nothing to stop Israel from committing genocide. And genocide is the accurate term. And I believe that this is one of the things that cost Harris the election, because she said there'd be nothing different between her policies and those of Joe Biden. And I believe that the Trump administration's approach has just emboldened rather than hindered or discouraged Israel from committing more violence. He said he'd end that conflict in one day. Not only was that a lie, there hasn't even been an effort to do that. If anything, only encouragement, talking about converting Palestine to a luxury condo complex for tourists. And I know that Nellie, my Aunt Nellie, who spent her entire life living in Haifa after she made it out of the Nazi territory, be turning over in her grave to know what her country has been doing to the Palestinian people. And I know that my father would be literally crying looking at what is happening. It does not have to be this way, and it should not be this way. There are lots of Jewish people who do not agree with what Netanyahu and his regime have been doing. It is not anti-Semitic to say that Israel should not commit genocide. Of all the populations on planet Earth that should have a sensitivity to the committing of genocide, it would be the Jewish population who has endured such a horrific effort at committing genocide on them. And they have been, the Netanyahu regime has been surrendering the moral high ground, which was the foundation for the creation of Israel, in its wanton acts of violence perpetrated on the Palestinian people. And for those who love Israel, they should demand that this stop. And for those who love the United States, for those who actually care about America having any kind of moral high ground, and care about how our resources, our tax dollars are used, we should not want nor accept that they be used to buy the bombs being dropped on children. That is not necessary to render Israel safe, and it is not anti-Semitic to say so. Stop the genocide. Thanks for watching today.